Hello and welcome to Assemblies of the World. And it is a very special day because it is a day in which I get to speak to Liz Costa. Hello, Liz.
Hi, sweetheart. It's so nice to see you always.
And I always get so excited before our conversations. Now, just a brief explanation of what it is that you do for those who have not yet had the pleasure of watching previous conversations.
Okay. Well, for probably about over 30 years now, I have been working with earth grids and different forms of energy lines, really, on our planet. And that came about as a result of a trauma experience I had as a child, where I was in a near-death experience, and I was shown quite a bit about our Earth history, both forward and backward. And somehow, I don't know how, because how could I? It opened up something in me that allows me to connect in such a way that I receive a lot of information. It's there's no logic to it. It is a very fluid, intuitive process. But I have been all over the world when it's kind of like I get these very strong knowings that I need to go somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. It just happens. And what I've been doing for the past, I want to say 10 years, very specifically, is a new grid system has been coming online, and it's been quite slow, and it's been part of a cosmic thing that we are experiencing right now. It's connected to all of that. So rather than just kind of being activated immediately, it's been a very slow, methodical process of both the I want to say disintegration of the old grid and the development of the new grid. And so I've been very involved with this development of the new grid. Not that I'm doing it, nature's doing it, God's doing it, the universe is doing it, whatever word you want to use. It's not my work, but I have been an active part in that. And so where I come from, if that makes
So
sense.
this grid that you are talking about is a natural energy grid linked with our planet, or is it coming from our planet? Is it around our planet? How is it?
Well, what I work with specifically is the grid that lives actually as part of the planet, much like the meridian system that works in our bodies. Now, all of that is changing. So where we used to have what we were always calling chakras and very specific node points, all of this is going away. It is a completely different thing now, and that includes us. That's an evolutionary thing. I'm not saying this moment in time, it's just someone snapped a finger and we no longer have an energy system like we've been told we've had for thousands of years. But that all of that was part of an old paradigm. It will not be that way in the future. It's already changing. And also our biology is changing as a result of that. There's no form on this planet that can function without connection to the grid. We are informed by the grid, and then we are in form as a result of that, if that makes sense. There's not one without the other. So we are already starting to get informed by this new grid system that is being activated. And that a lot there are, I think there are, I know that there are other people that are talking about these things. I try not to really be influenced by too many other people. Not that I don't hear or listen. There's some amazing people out there. It's just I personally try to keep that to a minimum, because this is not a mental process for me. In fact, my feeling is that we have been in this sort of artificial synthetic overlay of the organic way of us living, because we have been in a mental uh, construct. So the less we can stay in a mental way of viewing the world, and the more we can stay in a more embodied, feeling, heart-centered way of being. And this is practical. This isn't woo-woo. Uh, you connect more with the new grid from that perspective, which takes some effort. We have to discipline ourselves to stay out of the analytical way of expecting logic, expecting things to be linear, expecting to know a really obvious path to something. It isn't going to be like that anymore. We're not going to be doing goal setting and then have this landmark and that landmark, and everything has this perfect progression. That again is part of the old system. And anyone that gets caught up in needing that to still be the case is going to find themselves in a lot of frustration and irritation and worry, because it's going to feel very out of control. And this is one of the things that concerns me about people's psyches as we move through this transformation, because of that out of controlness that people can get caught up in, because they can't plan the way that they used to. And they can't, and the irony is, I've been practicing that way of being without even knowing I was doing it through this work, because there is no way for me to plan. I have no idea anything other than I need to go to a certain country, for example, and then I have to just go to that country and take it one step at a time until I end up in the spot. I don't have any authority figures telling me, here's the process, here's the step by step, you need to go here, it's not like that. I just show up, and then I have to feel my way through it and pick things up and be very, very, very sensitive to what, and I get one piece, and then I take an action on that piece, and eventually, in this very roundabout way, I end up where I'm supposed to be, and it's something occurs. It always does. But to trust that to that extent is a very different than the way that we normally function. And so I'm finding that is what's becoming more and more what the new grid is expecting everyone to be able to do in all areas of their life, which is a big ask.
Okay, so you've said so much there, and I'm just trying to find a concrete way of exploring this so that we can have a better grasp of what it is that you're talking about. So if we come back to the relationship that we have with this grid. So this is an energy grid that operates on the planet. And so we might be thinking of things like the Schumann frequency. Is that what we're talking about? Let's see if we can get more into the nitty-gritty of what this is.
Yeah, and that this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of trying to get really logical and physical about this, because this is a non-physical experience. This is a quantum event. So the closest you can get to understanding it on a physical level will be to try to understand plasma technology or plasma physics. And that is, that takes an enormous amount of education to try to understand that the universe is 99.99% plasma. And plasma physics are different from our 3D material world physics. So everything that we think we know about physics and how things work will no longer be valid. And so we have to shift our mind altogether about how we look at things. So the grid that is becoming activated is much more in the plasma field than it is in like any of the ways that the old dowsers would speak about it. And I've been studying that stuff and been a dowser for a long time. So this is not me saying that was bad or wrong. It was perfect for the time frame. But we've shifted so much now into this new activation that when I speak about things like, dragon lines, for example, this is a particular frequency that is becoming activated that does have a physical effect. So we will have physical effects from this, and they could be rather significant with regard to things like earthquakes, and we have a tremendous change in the temperature and I'm not talking about the climate change stuff that is put out into the narrative. I'm talking about the actual core of the earth changing temperature and how that's moving around the earth like a tsunami, changing the temperature of the magma level on our planet. And this is like almost like birth, when your hormone levels are going insane, and your body temperature just can't regulate itself, and it's just transformation after transformation after transformation, and trying to linearize that and say, well, we know what's going to come next, is not that easy to do, because we've not been through anything like this in a long time. We're coming towards the end of what the Hindus call the Kali Yuga. So we are, and we're not at the end of it yet. People are saying, oh, the golden age is here. Well, I mean, it is. We are starting to feel it. We're kind of on the front end of it, but we're not out of the Kali Yuga yet, and won't be, according to at least what I have seen and certainly have felt in the planet for several hundred years. We are the front end of this, and so those of us who are actively, part of it, if you will, or at least conscious that we're in something that's different, are setting the stage for something that is going to be, unbelievable, but it is not here yet. We have to go through it. We have to go through the kind of birth pangs of how does a physical body manage to become less dense than it's been. We've been in such a dense form. So this grid is much less physical than the other one was. We don't have any instruments at this point in time that can measure this, that I'm aware of. We might, but I've never come across it. And so I'm happy to be made wrong about that. But we have measurements for all of the other kinds of lines that have been written about in books that people have been dowsing on and this and that. But we don't have the measurements for it, which doesn't mean it isn't there. It just means we don't have the measurements, the instruments yet, because our consciousness has to raise to the point where someone is then guided to create them. That's how this works.
Okay, so plasma. This is a word that is familiar to, I think, most people, but nobody or very few people actually know what it is. Can you tell us a little bit more to explain that?
I can do the best I can. I am not a plasma physicist. I don't claim to be one. I just know that over the time period, and this has been really accelerated since 2017, there was a big change in 2017, and there's going to be and is a big change this year. And my guess is, and again, not a physicist or an astrophysicist, this has to do with our solar system, with our cosmos, with our universe. There are changes happening that affect this planet in such a way that our grid lines get shifted around. And in 2017, we had a massive shift in our grid lines. And the way that I experienced it, and I think we may have talked about this on one of the other times we've chatted, is that this was when the true balanced feminine energy was grounded into the new grid in 2017. And the only thing that I have been able to correlate that with, and there may not be a correlation here, but I'm really intuitively feel this, is that at that point in time, there was a interstellar object that came into our solar system in 2017. It was called Umuma, and no one really knew what it was. And of course, there was all kinds of stuff going on around the internet about it being Nibiru or it being aliens coming or whatever. And it just came and it did a flyby and it went. And we had this massive shift. A massive shift, not only in the grid line, which I was very involved with at that time, but also in consciousness. Things started to really speed up in terms of what we were going to be going through in the future, which has happened, right? We've had an unbelievable period in that regard. Not easy, but lots and lots of change since then. And earlier this year, and in fact, I think the last time we spoke, I was mentioning to you that the male aspect of that was beginning to solidify itself. Wasn't quite there. It's kind of like activated and deactivated. It seems to be doing this kind of dance. Well, I spent 6 weeks in the Pyrenees very recently, and the majority of that was with this particular energy. And I can tell you that it is absolutely now active, solid, and there's not dancing anymore. There's no more dancing. It's dancing with the feminine, but it's not dancing in and out of connection with the new grid. And wouldn't you know it, that we have another interstellar object that is now called 3I Atlas in our solar system. Now, this one is very different from the last one in that it is going to actually come a lot closer to the Earth than that one did. And we don't know what effect that's going to have on all kinds of things from, solar activity and whatnot. But I, in my heart, absolutely know that there is something about this that is going to give us some kind of a huge bump for those who are there for it, to bump up consciousness, for transformation to become even quicker than it was from 2017 till now. So there's something there. Again, I'm not the smartest person on the planet. I'm just sharing my version of where my work takes me and how I interpret that.
So, just to make this clear, what we're talking about happening in the solar system has nothing to do with what certain wealthy individuals are doing with satellites.
My guess is that those wealthy individuals are trying to take advantage of what is happening naturally in our solar system as part of a natural cycle. We are not in a natural matrix, if you will. We have a synthetic overlay, and what they're trying to do is thicken that synthetic overlay so that we're not able to raise our consciousness to the point that we could really transform how we are. There's nothing they can do about it. There's no point, in my opinion, in getting all worked up about any of their shenanigans, because it's all going to be taken out by nature. Nature decides these things. So I think that there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of panic at this point from that side of things. But there is no aspect of me, and certainly not anything I have picked up from the planet, that there's any danger of that actually being successful in any way.
Well, that is reassuring, but we are still suffering from the attempt to suppress. And so I guess the next question I have is, how do we engage with the new grid? And in fact, even before we get to that, you were talking about the fact that the meridian points on the body are going to be changing. And maybe it would be good to have a sense of how or in what way, if you know, because I still feel pretty organic, and and when I meditate, I do still feel my chakras where I expect them to be. So,
See, and there you have it. You answered your own question, sweetheart.
so tell me about this.
Yeah. So remember that we are in a mental plane. Everything has to do with how we think about things and what we believe. And when you expect and you believe that this is how it is a little bit of a trap, because what it doesn't do is allow the bigger intuitive part of you to be curious and playful about what else might be happening and what else might be there and what else might be possible, not out of anything other than, well, this is how it's been, so this is a comfort zone for me. This is what I'm used to. This is my sanctuary. This is my safe place. This is where I can find peace. And because peace is a little hard to find these days, we go back to the familiar. That's what we find peaceful, whether it's comfort food or it's comfort in wherever we get it. It's natural to want to do that. And that is going to be a bit of a limitation as we move on through this process. It's better to hold these things very lightly. It's not, you don't have to throw everything out because we don't know yet how to connect with the new thing. So the most important way to deal with it is, well, there's two things that I'd like to share there. One of them is to really learn to be comfortable in uncertainty. And that's a very uncomfortable thing for humans to hear. They like things the way they are, okay? And they don't like change. But that's all we've got. And it's going to be nothing but more of that. So giving yourself little tiny ways at first before it's thrown at you with a flamethrower, try to find things in your life that you can start to sit in uncertainty and discomfort and just be there without having to know what's the next step, because I want to be out of this. I want to be comfortable. So you have to, I have to understand. I have to understand. You're back in the mental plane again every single time you do that. So if you can understand the process a little better, you can understand that getting back into the mental plane is going to be your downfall at some point. So being able to stay in uncertainty and feel your way through and be happy with the next thing you have rather than having the next 10 steps. You won't have them. Things are changing too quickly for anyone to have that. So we have to be comfortable with having the next one. And then we sit there and we wait until it's really clear that then there's that next thing for me to do. And so that's one thing that's very, very important, that comfort with uncertainty. The second thing is this idea of discernment. This is something that takes some practice and some skill to be able to discern through using your own inner guidance, your own intuition, not through outside authority figures, even people who are really smart or you look up to or whatever. It's not that you have to throw all that out, but it cannot be your ultimate guide to anything anymore. You have to be able to find a way to upskill yourself in discernment. And there's a very specific thing we have to discern, and that is the difference between something that's organic and something that's synthetic. We will come to find, as we go through this process, that we have been living in a synthetic reality. And so therefore, when more truths are revealed, just how much of the world that you've been interacting with and how many beings, for example, in our world are not organic, that can be a real problem. It's a problem, number one, for just to hear such a thing and have to face that. But number two, how do you tell the difference?
That was my next question. So, because you've used the word synthetic, and we associate that word with artifice, and particularly with technology. So technology versus organic. So when you tell us that we're living in a synthetic reality, I think that bears a little bit of explanation.
So what I mean by that is we have an organic reality. We call it nature. We've all connected with that. We can feel when you look out over a vista or even just lean against a tree, you can feel life. I think everyone has had some even small experience of what it's like to be in the vicinity of life, true life. That's what I mean by organic. When it doesn't have that signal, then it is something other than organic. It comes from a different place than from the source of our creation, the one creator of all of life itself. It doesn't carry that signature. But because we've had this kind of, it's not that the organic isn't there. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that there has been an overlay on that to a more synthetic way of being that has kind of taken us not hostage. We're not prisoners of this, believe it or not. We are just, it's been very comfortable. And this is why I'm saying about the uncertainty bit. That's why it's so important to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's the comfort bit is the hook.
I would say that we have been captivated by
Word for
what
it.
is deemed to be sophisticated. And sophisticated is anything that is unnatural. And this goes right back to the ancient world, where the word pagan was a derogatory term. I think even it was a Celtic times, but I can't now remember which part. But pagan was a derogatory term for anyone who did not live in cities, and so
Oh,
it was close to nature. And this is the original meaning of the word, and it's totally about the that old fable, the country mouse versus the city mouse, where the country mouse goes and visits their cousin in the city, and the wealth, and everything is you know the word urbane, and it's everything that is sophisticated. So it's about being as far from nature as you can. That is the mark of sophistication. And we are captivated by the gloss and
yeah.
what appears to be this suave way of being versus the hard work of living in harmony with the seasons, etc. So this is a very ancient thing, and I think that this is what you're talking about when you talk about the overlay.
Yeah, and that was brought in, and little by little, over a long, long period of time, we, like you say, you'll use your word, became captivated by the ease of that. And when you look at what we're going through now with AI, well, why do you think people are so enamored with AI? Because it makes their life easier. They don't have to think about things. They don't have to. I read something recently that by, I don't know, 2035, there won't be a doctor who hasn't gotten their medical degree using AI. They have no idea how to do anything. They're completely We are moving towards absolute complete dependency on that. How many people now can't get from point A to point B unless they have their sat nav on? But, we're shutting down aspects of ourselves because it's easier, right? To just use the technology. So this happens little by little. This dependency comes in. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of being able to discern for yourself. It's not about looking outward and judging anyone else for the choices they're making. It's looking at yourself and saying, where can I say no to some of these things and re-engage with the organic, natural, intuitive discernment that we have within our own selves and use it, strengthen it. It's a muscle. Because when it starts to become more common knowledge that many of for example, the beings we share the planet with, who we assume are all organic beings, turns out it's not all of them. Well, how are you going to know the difference if you have not built this muscle of truly knowing who you are and getting your information from within yourself, as opposed to some external cue or some external, because you won't be able to. We're all looking, and no matter when you get on the internet now, the vast majority of what you see is not real. It's made up. Can you tell the difference? I can promise you the majority of the time you can't. And if you're in any kind of distress, if you're in any kind of a fear state, you will see it even less. So this, to me, is the ultimate way that we move through this process, is coming back into yourself and getting that skill very well honed, that I trust myself so implicitly of what it is that I'm engaging with here, so that I can decide how much I want to engage with that thing and how little I want to engage with it. Technology isn't going anywhere. We're not going to just suddenly get rid of it, but it's about the choices of engagement. And those rules of engagement are yours. They're not somebody else's to tell you how they're supposed to, what they're going to be.
Coming back then to the new grid, and what, so I guess maybe the question I want to ask is, given that these new technologies and systems that, because we can look at this at different levels, you're talking about this at an energy level. And we know that there are people who have certain intentions for how they see life on Earth, which are non-organic, and I would call it inhuman. And quite frankly, it feels like they're trying to steal our planet from us. So we know that their buzzword is change. And the rest of us want change too. But it's going in two different directions. And I guess what I'm wondering is, if we could ask the new grid what it wants to support, what would the answer be? If we're going to work with this new grid, what interactions should we be having with it, and which direction should we be moving in?
Well, to have connection with it, you need to be out in nature in some way, right? I think that's pretty obvious. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm at the top of a mountain or I'm at the sea. It can be in your backyard. You have, a little square of fresh grass or a tree. It doesn't have to be fancy, but some way of making a conscious intention to connect with the new grid. Number one, you have to want it. It has to matter to you. There has to be something in you that resonates with even the ideas that we're discussing here today. Because if it just sounds like nonsense to you, then you're not ready. You will, everyone will be. Because if you are a true human, this is the whole reason that you're incarnated at this time, is to do this. So there's no doubt in my mind that every single pure human that's on this planet right now, awake and aware and alive, is doing this and will continue to do this and will have no problem doing it. So there is no worry whatsoever that some people have it, some people don't have it. Every single person has all of the kit that they need to do this. Okay, so that's number one. Anyone out there who's worried about, but I can't feel anything or whatever, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's happening anyway. So the only thing that I'm saying here is, do you want it to be a conscious experience for you? And if you do, then you have to put the intention out there for that to be the case. Number one, and build that muscle of being able to get that sensitivity of the difference between these two things. The earth itself is an organic being. There is no even remote. She made an agreement to allow this experience of the synthetic thing to occur, but it's over now. It's finished. It's the end of the time for that. It cannot be sustained any longer with the new grid. It just cannot. That does not mean that there isn't plans to create that somewhere else, create another level of this synthetic and pull people who are not, and it won't be the true humans. However, the true humans are too queued up, whether they realize it yet or not, it doesn't matter. Through this process, every single one will realize at some point, even if they haven't yet, and that includes people around us that we go, oh my gosh, they're so asleep. They'll never ever understand it. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. So just pay attention to your own space, put your energy into this for you, and it ripples out and helps everyone around you to disconnect themselves, because there is a really strong connection to this synthetic way of being. It's very seductive. So some people have way more attachment to it than others, and they'll hang on till the very last second and probably suffer more for that. I think, but I could be wrong about that. But that could happen. Well, it will be in stages, but every single human who is intentional to move into back into, and it's not really a move either. There's nowhere to go. It's not. We aren't going to be picked up off the planet and taken somewhere else. This is a frequency shift. It's not anything other than that. And what I'm suggesting is that there could be and is an attempt to seduce people through technology into another layer of synthetic if they cannot bring themselves. I don't think that will actually occur. I think, and this is just conjecture, but I think people will actually drop their bodies before doing that. But that remains to be seen. And then they would reestablish a new organic biology in the new frequency on I don't want to say on a planet, because it's like I said, we're not going anywhere. There is no space that's different in a different place. It's all here, and it's just a matter of frequency shifting from one thing to another. They just won't experience it. We don't perceive the world just because of our senses. We perceive through our consciousness. That is what is there. And so it is as the consciousness changes, we perceive differently. And so we will perceive a new physical way of being, different from what we have now. So that is happening simultaneously with this other desire to pull people into an even deeper synthetic digital world. Yeah, go ahead.
So as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, I'm using my imagination and I'm thinking, I quite like our bodies as they are. But based on work as a past life regressionist, one of the things that seems to happen, and also doing regression work with life between life, is that when we incarnate, it's almost like we're putting on a suit and we have to get used to that suit. And one of the things that spirit coming into this physical body has to contend with is our amygdala. And the fact that it's wired in a very biological way for fight, flight, freeze, and I would add appease and deceive as survival mechanisms, which sometimes means, or in fact, very often means, that when we have trauma, and this can be small trauma that's drip, 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 tantamount to a big one, or a big trauma, as in an incident or a recurrence of incidents. But what it means then is that we shift into fear. And it's because our amygdala is now telling us that we're in danger. And it's very difficult to come out of that. And in addition, there is research that is showing that once the amygdala becomes enlarged, actually physically enlarged in the brain when we are going through trauma, and that it is very, very difficult. And I think, in actual fact, I've read that it's impossible to get it to come back into the size it originally was. So I guess what I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, if there's one thing that stands in the way of us being able to hold a higher frequency, it's fear. And there is something about our biology that actually makes it difficult for us to not be this way. So I'm wondering whether there is something about the rewiring of the brain to deal with this instinctive part of us, so that we are more in our power than in fear?
Well, like I said earlier, our actual biology is changing. Now, what the details of that are for the different parts of our body, including the amygdala, I don't know what that's going to be or in what order things are going to change. I couldn't possibly know that. I can't imagine anyone saying that they do. But what I do know for absolute sure is that our actual biology is changing. Mine has already changed, and it has changed in a significant way in the last year. I know that I'm on because I work so closely with the grid, I know I'm almost like a little test case on things. So things generally happen to me 9 to 12 months before they happen to other people. So I sort of watch that. I have been watching that for quite some time. So I'm already having my own experience of that change in biology that should never happen. It's completely illogical, and every single person, every single medical text would tell you it's impossible. So it's not. So what the thing I want to say is all of these ideas have been true. We have to hold them very lightly now as being continuing to be true. That's the best way, because the more we hold on to these absolutes, this is how the brain is set up. This is how the hormonal system is set up. This is how the immune system works. Boom. Anytime you're finding that you're putting your feet in the sand going, no, I've seen the data, I know that it works this way, this is going to be a problem for you in the future. I don't mean you personally, I mean as you in a general sense, in that area that you dig your feet in, and don't allow for a little bit more give on what you think is possible for humanity right now, because the changes are extraordinary, and everything comes out of the mind. It has to change in the mind first. So if the mind is not flexible, if the mind is stuck in things being as they are, and what makes the mind so stuck? Your identity. If your identity is attached to a concept, i.e., the letters after my name, or how I make my living, what people think of me, where I get my respect from, this is the egoic aspect of the identity that has got this tight grip on these ideas. So letting go of identity issues is a huge part. And I think we've seen some things in these past years that are around this idea of identity that are very chaotic, and they're causing all kinds of issues for people. But it doesn't surprise me that that's the case, that there's this incredible focus. It's been distorted, and it's been just confused, and it's I'm not saying that those things are, but the fact that it's happening is part of this process. It should be happening. Maybe it's being hijacked by this other synthetic consciousness that is trying to use it for their own ways. But if we can be bigger than that, if you can rise above some of that and see the game that's being played, watch the theater going on without getting too hooked into the details of it, if you can bring yourself to step back from it and watch it a little bit more than get involved in it, you'll see that these concepts that are going on are genuinely organic concepts that are happening to all of us. And then something else is coming in and interpreting them for us, and then flooding us with what that interpretation is. And then we take that as truth. So we come right back to what I said before. If you are staying internal and discerning from your own self, you start to see that game, and you don't get so caught up in someone else's interpretation, because it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it, or everything that pops up on your searches or whatever is talking about that, and suddenly it starts to become real or truthful. Just back off a bit and don't let yourself get hooked into it.
Yes, and I think the other thing that you have said, which is very important, and actually it's a constant in terms of physical, emotional, and mental health, is to be as natural as possible and to connect with nature as much as possible. That much seems to remain the same,
Yeah.
which I think is one of the reasons why such efforts are being made to separate us from nature. Um, there there is a concerted effort to separate us from nature, be it through artificial foods, be it through land grabs. It doesn't matter. It just seems that the aim is to separate us from nature. And if that doesn't tell us to turn around and go right into nature,
Right into
what
it.
else does?
Anything that's getting pushed really hard, you better turn around and look at something else. That's all I can say, because this is only going to continue. This isn't going to get any easier, but not for a while. So the only thing we have is internal wisdom. That's what you can trust. That's what you can count on. So build that up so that you aren't confused as you get bombarded more and more with all of this other stuff that's pulling you and confusing you and taking you outside of what and who you really are.
Yes. Well, there is some comfort and some hope, but I think we still need our seatbelts.
Yes.
That's
I would say that the seatbelts are probably useful for a little bit longer, but it absolutely is a hopeful situation. It's beyond hopeful. It's really is a done deal. There is a positivity that's here, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. This is a transition period. There's no such thing as a transformation that is just like it's a roller coaster ride. And sometimes, I mean, there are some mornings that I am just elated with the fact that I am here experiencing such an extraordinary moment in human history. And other times I'm like, why do I have to be waking up today? I don't want to. I'm done. I'm exhausted. It's enough. And and it's just this. It's just this. So being comfortable with each of those, that up and down. If you need more rest, if you're having a day where you really connect, having that kind of it, then just give yourself, we have to do that, because this is real and it's happening. And that compassion for yourself when you need it is absolutely essential to get through this. We cannot be warriors all the time. It just is, it's too taxing. These energies that we're receiving are highly taxing to our nervous system. We have to adjust little by little. That's why the process is slow. I hear, because I've been around a long time, so there are a lot of people who are my age going, I've been waiting for 40 years for the, yeah. And if it's any faster, none of us are going to be able to make this transition without dropping the body first. It won't be possible because it's too intense. It's too hard on the nervous system. We have to do it incrementally. But there are times we get hit with big energy rushes, and then we're going to wake up on a day and go, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. When is it going to be over? Because that's a time when we now need to just rest and allow that to really, integrate into us. And then we gain our momentum again, and we're back to being, shining our light. It's going to be this way. So it's best to just accept that.
And that is very reassuring because many of us are having that yo-yo of energy experience. So it's good to know. Thank you so much, Liz.
You are so welcome.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you all for watching. Now, just a reminder that in the description box, you will find links to the CABI website, so that if you have not yet joined the Community Assembly of the British Isles, today is the day. Do so and find out who else is wanting to participate in creating a much happier world. Until next time, goodbye.